Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Devin Townsend founded the extreme metal band Strapping Young Lad and was its primary songwriter, vocalist, and guitarist from 1994 to 2007. He's also had an extensive solo career and has released more than 29 albums across all of the projects as of 2023. Townsend announced the third release in his Devolution series, Empath Live in America, which was released August 4th of this year. The Devolution series so far has comprised some unique live performances, and this one was no different. Empath Live in America is a document of the tour that was cut short in early 2020 due to the onset of the pandemic. As Devin explains, this was a very unique tour for me, and one that was regrettably cut short by the pandemic. It was a stripped back version of the order of magnitude band, but without choir and a few other members. But as I tried to do with each tour, the goal was to make this a unique and special night. Therefore, this tour marked a freeform version of the material. Townsend will be continuing his tour to the land of the Down Under, Fremantle, Australia, beginning November 8th of this year. It's been 25 years also since Devin released the first solo album under his own name, dubbed Infinity, that calls for a celebratory release. So we're all proud as they present the Infinity 25th Anniversary Edition. The album is set for release on the 24th of November of this year. This newly remastered version of the album comes as a limited 2 CD digipack, gatefold, LP booklet, and as digital album. It includes all the bonus tracks from this era, as well as a newly shot artwork and liner notes from Devin. Please welcome Canadian singer, songwriter, musician, and record producer Devin Townsend to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Devin.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
So you must be excited about this anniversary edition, huh?
Yeah, I'm excited about a lot of things right now. I mean, so much of my career has been spent putting everything I've got into these records, that being able to look back at them 25 years later, there's a real practical value to me as well about reissuing these things, because I'm able to say, oh yeah, I remember where I was at that point. I remember the effort that went into that and the drama that went into it, and then how here I am 25 years later, the things that I learned from it were such that I've just come so far on a technical level. And reflecting on these things in the past is been really good for me, and I'm excited about it in that regard.
Before this anniversary edition, you released two incredible albums, which I love. First of all, Empath Live in America, which was the third release in the Devolution series, which saw some really great artists, guest artists on the album. And the album the engineering was incredible. Where was that recorded? Was that in Montreal?
That was in a couple places. That was
Okay.
Montreal and Boston. So there might even be one more place in there, I'm not sure, but we had accumulated recordings throughout that tour. The front of house guy, Stanley, who also mixed it, he's great. He recorded all this material, and so when it came time for me to assemble something that acted as a document for this kind of idiosyncratic tour, I was able to kind of go through and say, well, that was a cool moment, and that was a cool moment, and assemble this experience with it, I guess. And like you had pointed out, and I think it's worth talking about even further for me, is that tour was unlike any other tour that I had done, because there was no set list. There was no backing tracks and the musicians that I had involved with it, a lot of them weren't familiar with the style of music that it was either.
That's crazy.
Who sings with me in Casualties of Cool, she's got a very, she does her style, which is a lot more you know, I don't even know what Che's style is. It's definitely more commercial. And Morgan was, you know, free form improv, and Mike Keneally was from
Hmm.
Zappa's band,
Right.
and Nathan was in Porcupine Tree, and so there's a lot of people. And Diego, he had so many things to do to try and replicate all those sounds live, that not only was the personnel idiosyncratic, but also the way that it went about was such that I would be able to say, okay, let's play this song, let's chew this song, and then we'd have to learn it on stage sometimes, or learn it before the show. And it resulted in something that was uh, nerve-wracking for me, because I think typically the output that I've had and what I choose to do is so tightly controlled.
Hmm.
Like, my vision for music is pretty specific. So in order to articulate that in the ways that I think are appropriate, it's required me to have kind of a stranglehold on so much of what I've done for so long, that being in a situation where there's no net and there's no set list and they don't know the songs and it can go one way or another. And then the pandemic shutting it down was just, it was something that I thought was worth documenting. And yeah, I'm proud of that, man.
I believe me, I know the feeling, man. It's like me with it. I've done like over 600 interviews, never lost one. You never had any issues. And then, especially this week, I've lost 4 interviews, man,
Ah,
because the computer crashed and I don't know where it went. It got deleted. And now I'm going back to the PR guys trying to get it back. And I spent a lot of money trying to recover this stuff. And
yeah, it's hard.
oh,
That's
man, I'm just not me when that
well,
shit
but
like
you know
that
what?
happens.
But you know, it's interesting. It's if you're looking at it from an optimistic point of view, and I'm sure you're the same way, is the things that I learned from the mistakes are oftentimes more valuable than
Hmm.
the successes in the
I
long run.
think you're
Because
right.
the
Yeah.
successes end. That's like, okay, that was the success. There you
Yep.
go. But the failures were like, wow, in order for me to find ways to navigate this, it requires me as a person to feel a certain degree of humility and
Hmm.
accountability. And then how can I learn to have this not happen again? And then it does happen again. And then you're at that point, you're
You're
starting,
ready
I
for
find,
it.
yeah, well, and also I find myself starting to become more self-deprecating too. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? How come I'm not able to do this? And I would I would argue that most of the success that I've had from creative ventures are directly on the backs of like big failures for me, you know. So so hooray! I don't know.
Yeah. Hooray.
Yeah.
Well, 25 years later, I mean,
Yep.
you
Yep.
got okay with all those failures, I guess.
Yeah. But you know what? This is when people who are just starting in any creative field ask me if I have any advice for them. I've said this so many times, I'll say it again. It's learn how to fail
Right.
efficiently. Learn how to do it so that by making something that you find embarrassing, or by making a misstep that you think, uh, there's no possible way I can come back from this. But when you do, there's something invaluable that comes from that creative process, just from being willing to get back on your feet. And I think the amount of brilliant artists that maybe never reach their potential, I would wonder how a Venn diagram would look with the same group of people that would allow failures to stop them from trying again.
Right. Yeah. Especially authors. I'm an author. You read a book. I've got one that took me 10 years. You try to get it out there. You try to get a publicist. Nobody wants you. It's Stephen King had that same issue. When he first started, he threw away his manuscript and his wife got it out of the trash can. And because she did that, that's how he got started. Otherwise, he would have given up.
Well, one thing I'll throw in as devil's advocate here, and this is not to make that seem any less important, because it absolutely is. But just as devil's advocate, I was talking to a
Hmm.
friend of mine who was really upset because none of their artwork was being seen by anybody,
Right.
like they put it up on Instagram and no one sees it.
Yep.
3 people, 3 likes, whatever it is, right? And what they do is really good. And and they're thinking, well, why it seems like so defeating if nobody participates in it.
Yeah.
And I totally hear that, because on some level, having people participate with my work is very important to me. But I did read something that I sent to them that helped them as well, and that was that the act of creating is taking care of yourself. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking of your success in any field as being contingent on other people's not even validation of it, but even awareness of it,
Mm-hmm.
as much as it sucks, because it does, it shouldn't be a catalyst to quit creating just because no one's seeing it or no one's hearing it, because the act of actually getting it out of your system
Yep.
is self-help, really,
Yeah. It's a
real
win.
practical
Yeah.
level. So for anybody who's struggling, I would suggest, don't give up, not because maybe there's a potential in the future that there'll be huge success, but more so the reason why you maybe started doing it in the first place has less to do with other people's um, uh, validation of it than it might appear on the surface. I don't know.
No, I agree. I agree, Dr. Townsend.
I wonder. Well, I only say that because it's how I rationalize certain things. Like I put out a record called The Puzzle that I put a huge
Mhm.
amount of effort into, and no one heard it
Right.
really. And
Yeah.
no one, and the people who did hear it, I would say a good 70% of them didn't like it. And I put so much money, time, and effort into it, and I was convinced that it was like really like like a breakthrough for me, in a sense, that when the reaction to it was so like, dude, we don't want to hear this, we want you to do what you do typically, my first thought was like, oh wow, maybe I should stop experimenting in those ways. But this is why I brought that thing up that I had said to my friend, because I really
Hmm.
had to make peace with the fact that I did that for me.
Sure.
I did that, and the things that I learned as a result of going through it are more valuable to me than any course that I could have taken.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to keep that going. And yeah, it's certainly not coming from a doctor. It's coming from somebody who has fucked up a lot. You know what I'm
I
saying?
feel the same way as an author, man. I love, I really thought the last book would sell, but they're not selling, and I understand there's a lot of competition out there, and sometimes it takes a lot of money to really promote. But I did it for me. Same
There you
thing.
go. There you
I
go.
did it for me.
Are you going to
Yeah.
do another?
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
The
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? It's like the getting back up is
Yep.
is so important. It's like you never know how close you are to
Yeah.
somebody hearing it that is the right person
True.
to hear, or someone reading it that's the right person to read it.
Yeah.
And I think that, like really, you think of some of these art or some of these authors. I forget who it was. Was it uh Mary Shelley or whoever wrote
Hmm.
Frankenstein? That,
Right.
that
Right.
it was posthumous that people realized the
I
brilliance of
know. I
it, you know?
know. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, it is maybe for her bottom line while she was living in the Victoria ages, but again, I think it's really important now for me at least to have a clear perspective on why I do the things that I do.
Yep.
And I do it because that's what I do. Whether or
Yeah.
not people participate in it, it's what I do, right? And so there we go.
Well, as a music journalist, you're on the right track as
Yeah,
far
thank you.
as
Thank you.
commercially and all that, man. Because
Thank
the
you. And
music's great.
I've
Yeah.
got I've got good people around me
Good.
that help me be more than I am.
Yeah.
Plus, I've been getting back up on my off my feet or off the ground now for 30 years, and
Yeah.
that's no small feat. It's like some people who I was talking to about their first record. they're
Mhm.
saying, I don't know if I should continue. I'm thinking, man, I've been putting out records longer than you've been alive,
I know.
you know? So don't give up now, man. Like don't
Heck
give up
no.
yet.
Yeah. And you know what? You're lucky in this way. I talk to a lot of progressive rock artists who are brilliant from overseas, from Germany, Norway, all over the planet. And they can't make it here in the US because it's expensive. They're afraid nobody's going to want to book them in a venue. And, you've got tour dates all over the world, which is great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a real advantage.
Yeah, man. I mean, hard won too. I mean, I think the thing is, what people take may not take into consideration for someone like myself who has some degree of presence in that way
Right.
is that for years I didn't. For years I
Yeah.
ate shit in
Yeah.
America,
That's
you
right.
know? And for years I ate shit in Canada and Europe. It's like,
Yeah.
playing, I remember Canadian, I remember playing at this bar only like 8 years ago, where the only light show we had was they had a Coors Light sign behind the bar they could turn off and on. It's like, so I
That's
think that
funny.
people, and how do I phrase this? Sometimes people tend to take comfort in their own lack of ability in their own mind to do something by saying, oh, it's just easier for you,
Right.
you
Or
know,
you're lucky, you
or you're
know.
lucky. But I
Yeah.
think what a lot of times luck is certainly a component, but it's also hand in
Hmm.
hand with like a shitload of work. And
Yeah.
I think that as we get older, the younger generation say, well, you're doing this and you're fortunate. I'm like, I am absolutely fortunate. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm
Hmm.
absolutely fortunate. But man, I ate shit for years. And so
Yeah. That's
who's
right.
to say that the shit that you're eating now isn't just your aperitif for being able to do what it is that you want to do
Yeah.
down the road, right?
Yeah. And one word sums it up: perseverance.
Yeah.
You got to have perseverance. You can't give up, like
Well,
you said.
yeah, and well, also you can give up. You can absolutely give up. It's absolutely an option, man. I think that's something else to keep in mind. It's if somebody says, "Oh, I feel like giving up," I
Yeah.
say, "Well, then fucking give up." You
Yeah.
know, like I think that there's the thing that I still struggle with is the idea that there's a goal to it.
Hmm.
Like the end
Hmm.
game is whatever it is, like success, or you're gonna play the Super Bowl, or you're gonna
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
New York Times best-selling
Right.
whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a bit of uh, for me, it's a bit of a stumbling block because if I'm thinking about things in terms of goals, then it compromises the very thing that may eventually get me to that goal, which is just like
Hmm.
stick to your vision.
Yeah.
Stick to your vision. Don't worry about the goal. Don't worry about playing the Super Bowl because, if you're writing songs for the Super Bowl or something, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think what I'm trying to say is the goal-oriented society that we live in right now is also a bit of a pitfall if you're not careful, at least in my experience.
There are certain things though that keep artists alive. Like I don't know who I was talking to. I mean, it could have been Dave Mason, and the guys in Vietnam in foxholes, and they would put on music like Jimi Hendrix or
Mm,
Dave Mason or somebody like that. The airplane, and it saved them. Music saved them through all that experience. So that's something you can look back on and say your music made a lot of people happy, or you got through. They got through a lot of hard times because of your music.
yeah,
That's
no,
a that's a real win right
it is a,
there.
it is an absolute win, and two thoughts come into my head when we're talking about this. First off, I think that musicians aren't necessarily responsible for songs. You're responsible for picking the songs out of the air, and that
Hmm.
comes from a combination of circumstance and um uh habits on some level as well. And so if people are affected by the music, then I'm grateful for the music for being there. rather than feeling like a sense of like pride on a personal level. I'm proud of the work that I do because it's a lot of work, but not
Right.
the music necessarily. And the other thing is where I have tended to sort of go over the past couple of years, with pandemic and everything, is
Hmm.
these thoughts of like, well, what's the fundamental value of what this is? How much of my connection to doing what I do is maybe got its talons in a need to be heard, a
Hmm.
need to be seen, or a need to be validated, a need for any of these things. And if so, fuck, it's a lot of effort
Yeah.
if it's just because you're wanting attention, for example.
Right.
So the place that I landed with that has been helpful to me is, okay, well, don't think of it in the sense that the only reason you're writing music is just so you can be seen. It's like you say, if it helps other people by you sorting your own shit out in some or not, and then writing about it, and then people relating to it in a way that maybe they're not capable of expressing in the same way, then that's a service that you're providing that I think
Hmm.
is worth your time. Because what else are we going to do in life? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you
That's
got to
right.
do something. And so that seems like it's a worthy thing. And so I think the expression of any creative avenue at this point is rooted in uh I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do it. And that's where my inspiration seems to come from lately.
And if it wasn't hard, then everybody could do it, right? That's what they say.
Yeah, yeah, but then again, man, I mean, it's like how many amazing artists never got heard? Like
Yeah, I know.
countless, right? So
It's
it's
true.
like it's 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 a crapshoot. And I think that
Yeah.
this is why I say, like, if the goals are such like in the forefront of a creative mind, I think that can be really destructive
Hmm.
if all you're trying to do is express yourself. If what you're trying to do is make commercial art,
Right.
that's probably a great thing to have in your mind. Like, how do we succeed? I mean, where does the chorus hit, and what sort of snare drum sound do we use, and you know what I mean, and
Hmm.
how do we follow these formulas for success? Then that makes sense. But if you're just like yourself or I, where you're just trying to get it out of your system in a lot of ways, then the goals I've found in the past to be like pitfalls.
I knew you were a great musician from, I got to say, Light Work. Light Work was my favorite album. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I gave it 5 stars. I said phenomenal, magnificent, intense, mystifying, gratifying, genius, a rare musical gem, a melodic masterpiece. This is Devin's Sergeant Pepper Dark Side of the Moon album. And I really mean that. It was that
Thank
good, man.
thank you, brother.
Did you get a
It
great,
was
really good response out of that album? Like from me, like what I just said?
some people,
Yeah,
but it was
good,
also
good.
it was also an experiment on my side. I always wanted to see what would happen when I worked with the production team. I worked with Garth
Right.
Richards and his team, and uh, it was very different for me in a sense that it was a lot more linear than a lot of the music that I had done in the past. And some people react very well to that because it it eliminates a lot of the things that maybe they didn't like about what I've done in the past. I've got a lot of close friends of mine. They're like, man, if you would just quit doing that, then I would love the material. You know what I mean? Like, I got one of my closest friends lives in Long Island. He's
I
probably my
know.
closest friend.
I
And
get that too.
he's like, dude, you always fucking dig your heels in when the stagecoach is starting to get momentum and put some stupid melody over top of it. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what I heard. So with light work, working with a producer was very much like try not to do that, try not to do this, focus on this, yielded a record that like I'm proud of. I think it's really cool, man. But I also it wasn't easy for me. And it's a moment in time that I doubt I'll be able to repeat because my reaction to things is typically so contrary. Like, it's just my
Hmm.
deal, man. Like, if my wife always says to me, if I want you to do something, I ask you to do the opposite.
Hmm.
So as soon as Lightwork was finished, and there were so many parameters on that record for me, like don't do this, use this, do this, do this. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's what I asked for, and they did a great job. But after it was over, I was like, dude, the next thing that I do is gonna be fucked.
I know.
Just because that's just how I roll,
How do
man.
I top this?
Well, it's not even topping it. It's like, okay, I put so much effort into thinking about things from that frame of mind
Yeah.
that I've exhausted that temporarily. So typically what happens is I go polar opposite. I go the complete other way. And so that's what in
Mm.
the past, what that has yielded is simultaneous releases like Alien and Synkestra,
Right.
Accelerated Evolution and SYL, Deconstruction and Ghost. You know what I mean? It's like there's
Yeah.
that's what happens. And so because I put so much effort into the linear ways in which light work was articulated, what I'm working on now is pretty out there, I gotta say.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So I hope you
Can't
like
wait.
it, but if you really
Can't
felt
wait.
that way about light work, which means a lot to me, you may
Yeah.
not.
I was a top 40 DJ back in the late 70s. So I can pick a hit, okay, because I played a lot of hits on the air. If commercial radio was only like it should be, you'd be making a lot of money right now with Call of the Void, because
Well,
that's a
thank you,
hit.
brother. Thank you. Well, you know what I would say about that. First off, thank you. I didn't write it to write a hit for one. So,
Right.
and if it had become a hit, I wonder if that would have made my life, other than the financial side of it, more difficult.
Hmm.
Because,
Probably.
yeah, because the next thing that I do is like crazy shit. And so people who are like, hey, we finally, I've never heard your stuff before, but I heard Call of the Void, and now I want to hear more of that. And I'm like, well, actually, the next thing we're doing is this bullshit rock opera or whatever it is,
Yeah, right, right.
you know. And then it's like there's a certain amount of expectation that comes with and I also don't like the attention. Like the idea of that level of attention just seems horrid to me, man. Like celebrity is a curse. So
Oh
if
boy.
if I can kind of remain uncompromising in my output without having to answer to anybody,
Yeah,
let alone like an expectant audience that is new.
right.
Like you've got a million people or something that are new to you. Uh, you know, I appreciate being able to write songs that are commercially cool because I love commercial music, but I also like the fact that it can just exist alongside of like my puppet shows and my death metal stuff and my country
Yeah,
music and my
right.
ambient stuff. It's just another component
Hmm.
to the creative output, and I love being able to do that. I mean, I'm not saying that to rationalize it not being a hit. I'm telling you from my heart that I love the ability to record a song that in some other reality could be a hit and just let it go, you know?
Yeah. Well, you turn, I mean, your stuff can be a lot of things. It's eclectic, opera rock, progressive rock, little metal, rock, a little bit of everything really in a lot of your
Sure.
music.
Yeah.
And to turn a song like that could be a commercial hit, that's a gift. I just talked to Trevor Rabin, Trevor Rabin from
Yeah,
Yes,
he's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing.
and he turned a lot of prog stuff into commercial hits, which was,
That's an interesting point, brother. I never thought of
yeah,
that because I loved that record he did with Yes. I just loved
yep,
it and still do. It was so good. And I think that's the thing I didn't even realize. What he was able to do was bring a streamlined sensibility to
exactly,
to an existing model that made it palatable to people in a way. Yeah, and I think that's a skill because I never got the impression with Trevor Rabin that he was doing it subversively, like he was trying to,
hmm,
like maybe get in there and get a hit or something. I just think that's the way he hears stuff.
right,
And yeah, that's really cool. I really
yeah.
respect that guy, man. I always respected that guy.
He's such a nice guy too, man. We went on and talked for a long time. He's a great guy. He really
He's South
is.
African, isn't he?
Yeah, South African. He's got a new album out. We talked about the new album, which is really good. Excellent
Yeah.
album.
Well, we're on the same
Yeah,
label. I know my buddy Thomas, who runs Inside Out label,
right. That's a
he's
great
signed.
label too. Yeah.
It is a great, and it's because of
Yeah.
Thomas, man. Thomas and
Yeah.
Freddie are the guys there, and they're really great, and they just really care about music. And but you know what's interesting that you say that, man. I think that what I'm sort of feeling from having this conversation with you is how often I feel I can second guess things that I do because I'm thinking,
Hmm.
okay, well, what's your reason for doing this? As opposed to,
Yeah.
well, this is the way that you hear it. Like
Yep.
like you like things that have a good, strong melody. You like
Hmm.
things that are streamlined, and sometimes you don't, and
Hmm.
that's part of the process. And I'm happy with it, man. I really am.
I like the video too from Call of the Void, the train. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. Whose idea was
thanks.
that?
That's mine, and
I like it.
it's because over the course of the pandemic, I spent so much time watching train videos. Like it was because I've been on tour for so many years.
Yeah.
That sense of constant forward momentum with
Hmm.
the trains has been like a companion for me that really helped. In fact, like there was a lot of touring musicians that were struggling, I knew psychologically during the pandemic, and so I would send them to them as well. I'd be like, dude, just put this on the background. If you're anything like me, where you've spent half your life in the front of a bus, it'll be really therapeutic. And so when it came time for Call the Void, I realized that I wrote a lot of light work while watching those train videos, so it just seemed
Oh,
like a homage to it, right?
yeah. I just love the selection of music, you put on these albums.
Thank you. Right? Really appreciate
Heartbreaker,
it.
that's another great track.
Yeah,
Um,
Heartbreaker was an
yeah.
interesting one because I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but it's
Hmm.
worth bringing it up. The
Sure.
we had a song on light work prior to Heartbreaker being on the record, and it was called Honey Bunch. And I had
Right.
done a real rudimentary demo of it years ago, but we redid it, and Nile Rodgers played guitar on it. And
Oh, wow. Really?
and
Cool.
Shay, my friend, sang on it, and she's got such a
Yeah.
killer voice.
Yeah.
And everybody that heard it, not everybody, but a lot of people who heard it was like, this is the song that's going to change your life. And my first thought was not like, oh, fantastic. My first thought was like, oh, fuck, man. Uh, I like my life, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing about it is there was a sample on it from the band Aqua, and I had even redone the sample, so it wasn't like a verbatim sample, but it was from the song Barbie Girl, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so I had it delivered, and it was on the record, and I delivered the record with Honey Bunch on it, and I was always really kind of fucked up about it. I was thinking, man, I don't want to become famous for a Barbie song. Like it's like it's like a gimmick, right?
Yeah, like Zappa did with
Yeah,
Valley Girl.
yeah, in a sense,
Yeah.
right? So I went on tour, and then when I came back, and as soon as I landed in Vancouver, I had like a whole stream of emails that came in saying, we've been trying to contact Aqua, the band, and we've been
Right.
trying to contact their label, and they won't give the release for you to use this. So we have
Hmm.
to remove the song from the album.
Oh, man.
And I replaced it in the 11th hour with Heartbreaker. And
Hmm.
so it was one of these things where had that song been on the record, I mean, I still don't think it would have been a hit. I think it's so silly. But I'm glad that I was able to release Lightwork without that
Yeah.
feeling of like,
Right.
oh, this is not right for me.
Right.
You know, so circumstances provided an out that I was very grateful for.
No, Heartbreaker, man, that's a intricate track, and it's kind of a rock opera. It's like a concept album rock opera within a single song.
I'll take it. I mean, it's like that sort of writing comes pretty naturally to me, just the crazy stuff
Yeah.
that's all over the place, right? But the um uh, I don't know, man. I feel that I feel that I kind of dodged a bullet for myself there. Not because I didn't
Mhm.
like the song, not because I wasn't proud of it, but just because there was a part of me that felt like I was full of shit by putting it on
Right,
there.
right.
It seemed like so consciously constructed to like be like an ironic hit or something.
Yeah.
And and when if it had come out, it wouldn't have been a hit. That's my thought. And then it would have been even worse, because then I would have
Yeah.
felt like, as opposed to doing what I wanted on the record, I tried to do something that I wasn't 100% behind. So circumstance provided that out for me, and I'm actually very grateful for it, because I ended up, through the experience of making light work, coming out the other side really liking the record. And I don't think I would have had that song been on there.
See, Call of the Void should be a hit, and it's a hit without selling out. You know,
I'll take
it's a
that.
cool tune, man. It's like,
Well, they tried to service it to radio. Actually, they tried to put it into North American radio, and it's, didn't take, right. But I think,
I heard it on prog radio,
yeah, maybe those guys.
Morrow.com. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows, buddy? I mean, I guess the thing as well is, like, I don't read reviews typically. I certainly don't read comments online.
Yeah.
I don't participate in the social media stuff at this point anymore, really. And so my whole thing is just, I want to do the best job I can
Hmm.
on the things that I think are important to me. And then
Sure.
where that
It's good,
lands, I'm cool with it. I'm cool
it's
with
good
it because,
attitude. Good
yeah, thanks,
attitude.
man. Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of the
I'm
other
happy.
tracks I loved on this album, Dimensions, which kind of sounded like a Welcome to the Machine intro. It had
Yeah,
some Zappa-like guitar licks, which I loved.
yeah, yeah.
Um, some of the other tunes, gosh, Yogi was a kind of a psychedelic, 60s psychedelic track, which I liked.
Yeah,
I
well,
enjoyed.
oh shit, sorry. It's interesting because Yogi and a bunch of those other songs were simply B-sides, right? So
Huh.
how yeah, so basically the deluxe version of Lightwork is a collection of all the material I wrote during that time. But the
Hmm.
actual record ends with Children of God. Like,
Hmm.
that's the
Right.
actual record. And so what typically happens for me is, in my searching during the writing process of trying to figure out what it is that I want to say,
Hmm.
I just write immense amounts of material. And then when it comes to putting out expanded versions of it, I've got material that I've actually taken far. Like, it's not like a throwaway. I typically will record songs until I know whether or not it works. And that usually takes me to like 80 or 90% of finished. And there's a certain part of it that's frustrating, where I'm like, oh shit, that's not right. But I don't know until I'm upon it. And
Hmm.
at that point, I've got so much material that the side benefit of it is that I've got all this extra stuff I can put out, right? And that was an example of it.
There's nothing wrong with having extra material.
Yeah, man. So you play guitar as well, or you?
I do. I play a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I see the picture in the back there. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
in, yeah, we were all in a band in high school. So,
what was it called?
oh my God.
Come on.
We didn't have a name, but we started a punk band when I was going to broadcasting school in Fort Lauderdale, and we called it the Drugs.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, man. Well, I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, Ray, I'm gonna have to get going pretty quick here. So
Okay. I
we
got,
made it.
all right. You got the tour coming up in November, Australia.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. It's going to be
So
great.
it's been a while since I've been to Australia, and but conversely, the amount of times I've been to Australia is more than most artists that I know. Like, man, I've played in Australia a huge amount of time. Even the
Yeah.
Australian folks are just like, dude, you're here again? You know what I mean? Like,
That's hard to
so
do.
yeah, no, it really is. First time I went, we were one of the first bands to really
Huh.
extensively tour there, right? And
Yeah.
in the genre I'm in, at least. And then what I also missed about touring over the past couple of years, I've managed to kind of make up for. And Australia is the last place. Like, I've spent 12 weeks in Europe and 8 weeks in America, and now get to Australia, Japan, and then
Hmm.
I've kind of like covered in the most basic way the territories that I've tried to work over the
Hmm.
years.
Right.
And then I'm going to do, which is something which is the opposite of what I probably should be doing if I was a good businessman, and I'm just going to stop touring for a while. and I'm gonna just work on writing
On
and
songwriting. Yeah.
yeah, man, that's my hope.
Yeah. Good for you. Good for
Yeah.
you. You need a break, man.
Yeah.
Devin, here's your final question. I ask everybody this question. I'm sure I've asked you this before. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
Typically would say nobody. Like I
Never
don't.
had that answer.
Yeah, no, I don't have any real desire to collaborate with anybody, to be honest. But if I did, let me think. Enya.
Oh, and yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah,
Yeah,
never had that one.
yeah, I'd love to write some nice stuff and have
Very
a beautiful
cool.
voice on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Devin, thank you, man, for being on the show today. I want to say special thanks to Roy Avon from the Avenue Media for arranging this interview with Devin. You can pre-order the new release, the 25th anniversary release of Infinity, and you can pre-order that now. I guess just go to your website. There's a devintownsend.link.to/infinity remastered. Or just go to devintownsend.com, I guess, and you find out all that information. It'll also be on Amazon. All your stuff's on Amazon as well.
I
And
really
also,
appreciate it, Ray. And you have thoughtful questions, and I appreciate what you do. And thank you so much for the opportunity yet again. And I'm sure one day we'll meet in person. And until
that'd be
such time,
great, man. Yeah,
I wish
you
you
came
luck with
to
your writing.
Clearwater in the last tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm close to Clearwater, Florida. So
Okay. I like Florida actually. And
yeah,
yeah, I wish you luck with your writing too, man. Like do another book. I think that's awesome.
I think so. I think he just inspired me to
Okay, great, brother.
continue. All
We'll see you soon. Okay. Thank you for the
right, man. Thank you, Devin. Appreciate
Bye
it.
bye.
Take
You too,
care.
man. Bye bye.
Bye bye.